All right, Ben, let's kick it off.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to From Classroom to Cloud. So to start off, we just wanted to introduce ourselves. My name is Ben Kale, and I'm the Instructional Design Manager at BARBRI. And I've been with BARBRI for 4 years. Before being at BARBRI, I've been in instructional design for around 10 years, working at a few different universities and K-12 schools. My background is K-12, where I was a teacher, administrator, as well as a teaching and learning specialist over at Arizona State University in Tempe, Arizona. A little fun fact about myself to lighten it up. I've traveled to every continent except for Antarctica, and 47 of the 50 US states. I still have to go to Alaska and, strangely, Vermont and New Hampshire. So hopefully I can hit those up soon. So let me pass it over to Megan to introduce herself.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Putler. I'm the Director of Learning and Instruction for Law School Curriculum here at BARBRI and West Academic. I've been with West for about 6.5 years. Um, Went to Hamlin before it became Mitchell Hamlin for my JD and got my library degree from the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee. And my fun fact is that I am the 2019 Minnesota State Fair cross stitch champ, and I will hang on to that title and brag about it as long as possible. Everyone asks me when I will submit my next project, and the answer is always next year. So I would suspect that will remain the same for a while. So, before we move on, let's take a look at those poll answers. Just to give everyone an idea of the crowd we're chatting with today. The question was, what experience do you have with online learning? And the answer options were none, emergency learning, like during the pandemic, using online content in a residential course, teaching part online and part face-to-face, like in a hybrid modality, or teaching a fully online course. And we've got 60% of you have taught fully online courses, 20% have used online content in a residential course, and 20% have done the emergency learning. So a good spread here. So let's go ahead and move on. Go ahead, Ben.
Thanks, Ben. To start off, you might be wondering, especially now, why is online learning important, especially in a law school realm, and what do you need to know? And I think the big thing to start off is we have this changing landscape of legal education where the ABA is both relaxing its rules, allowing more opportunities for online learning, but as well as setting specific parameters on how that should look. And we're here to kind of help you through that. And one thing, we view ourselves as being a unique partnership for anyone we work with, whether it's individual professors or entire programs and schools, where we want to help walk you through the process and be the experts in content and other areas that you might not be in. So, for instance, you'll be the experts in your law and your specific topics of study, but we know the instructional design, we know the online learning sphere, and we know how to help guide you to have unique and effective online learning opportunities for your students. We also have a very extensive, comprehensive support system where if you're looking at, okay, we are going to do online learning in some space, now that we're moving into this 21st century and moving forward where everything seems to be online, is I can't do this all by myself. And we wanted to introduce some ways that BARBRI West can help you in that process. Megan, do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, we'll dive into some of these things in detail as we go, but It's absolutely about the partnership that we can offer as a combined unit on both the instructional design side of the fence and on the content side of the fence. That marriage is really what makes this unique, and I think what can really help solve a lot of pain points for everybody. So let's go ahead and move on to the next. Go ahead.
Thanks. And kind of this goes back to the poll question of what experience do you have with online learning and what you might see in the future with your students with online learning. And we want to make sure that it's clear that this in many ways applies to everyone, even if you've never done online learning and don't see it as the near future coming up, because especially post-pandemic and COVID, you all know that things happen that you might be thrown into a situation where you are teaching online, whether it be for a full semester or one individual class session. And with that, you want those days and those lessons to be as effective, if not more effective, than when you are with your students face to face in the classroom. So even if there's a snowstorm, as you see in this picture, you might be thrown into a situation where you need that online experience with your students. And in another way, you might desire it if students are struggling with a specific topic content and they need a little bit more instruction beyond what you're currently giving them in face-to-face interactions. You want to look into what possibilities and be prepared for possibilities of helping students when they're not face-to-face, whether it be interactive casebooks or with online instruction in different ways.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a few ways that we've heard from faculty over the years that they're wanting to flex as they teach based on some of the metrics that they might have from the instructional design they've put into their course. So if they're using, say, some multiple choice questions, and those are organized by certain topics, and they can see that the class is struggling with a certain topic in that class or a certain chapter, that might help them understand that, okay, I should really adjust the syllabus a little bit to spend more time on this topic, or maybe assign something that will help them understand this topic better before we get to that exam. So it's a way to calibrate and make sure that students are meeting those learning objectives for the class and really remediate before we get to the end of the semester when it's too late. And the other thing I'll mention actually is a lot of times when we work with faculty to build up these courses, it's the first time that they build a course online. We go through a lot of these principles that Ben's going to talk through, and they'll have sort of an epiphany moment of, these things obviously apply to online learning, but these are also principles that apply so well to a residential course, and it's going to change the way they think about designing a residential course and incorporating new and more interesting things to help those residential students too. So broad application, like Ben mentioned.
Kind of going back to where we started with, the ABA is recognizing the changes in law and education where online learning is a reality and it needs to be done well. We all know the issues and benefits of AI and different technology tools. So as a profession, the law needs to look into online education and make sure that we're moving in the right direction. And that comes to part of our own expertise of helping you navigate what the new standards and guidelines are when it comes to online learning. So for instance, when we're looking at distance education, this is standard 306, we want to ensure that there is still regular interaction between faculty and students. And one way we help with that with courses is we have a variety of tools to help with discussion boards, and we have skills, especially when it comes to instructional design, on the best ways to provide feedback that is beneficial for students, but not overwhelming for faculty. And we have a variety of tools that can help with that process. If we look at the credit hours, one thing that we do that we view as extremely important is making sure that you're meeting the credit hours needed for ABA requirements. And we kind of view this, we're going to go to this a little bit later, where our work is kind of like an assembly line where the professors and the colleges, you're the expert on the content. let us, being experts on instructional design and online learning, take some of the load of that other work. Because a lot of times professors might think that when they have to do online learning, it's a lot more work on them. But that's where we can come in and provide that support. And one of those support areas is tracking your ABA credit hours, making sure you're meeting them, making sure we're hitting these other standards of providing feedback, having discussion boards, having open office hours to have that instruction and discussions with your students. And just a reminder, as we go through these, feel free to ask us questions either in the chat or through our Q&A area, but we'll also have time at the end of the presentation to answer any questions. I think one of the biggest things that is changing in law education is assessment, where we look at the old form of you have a final or final project at the end of the semester, and that's what the grade is. But we're noticing, and you've probably noticed this as well, that there's this push, especially with the ABA requirements, for formative ongoing assessment throughout the course. And that's where an instructional designer can help you with that. What are questions, what are resources that you can use, and this as well with the West Academic products, so that you're making sure students are learning as they're going through their course, whether it is fully online, which is extremely important to keep track of where your students are at, or if you're only doing some aspects of your course online, we want to make sure that there's that formative assessment, whether it be quizzing or open-ended questions, or those discussion boards that are challenging your students and tracking their progress through your content. And then when it comes to curriculum, we recognize that when it comes to online education, there are difficult areas that seems like, oh, we can't leave this aside. And the ABA recognizes that. And whether that be field placements or clinics, we've worked on courses to help develop those important aspects of law education within a fully online realm, and also with mixed courses. Megan, I know I was talking a lot there, so I can let you jump in and say something.
Yeah. And specifically with regard to ABA 303, we have the updated standard with subsections B and C dealing with the professional identity formation and the diversity, equity, inclusion education. And those are something that I think everybody's still sort of grappling with, regardless of whether you're teaching online or residentially. And those are things that West Academic is definitely taking into account as we're working with our authors to create new content, update existing content to ensure that we're being responsive to those things so that the materials that you've used historically, or if you're looking for new materials, those things will be responsive to those requirements so that, if you're looking for reflections to help your students think about that professional identity formation in the context of your civil procedure class. We're going to have that sort of content built in to those doctrinal materials that you're using already. And then as you work with someone like Ben on the instructional design side, that sort of thing is sort of baked in and pre-thought of as the course is built. All right, go ahead, Ben.
And some of you know this, and some it might be a little bit new. I've been throwing out instructional design a lot. Whenever I meet someone and they ask me what I do, and I say I'm an instructional designer, they have no idea what I'm talking about. And I wanted to share kind of these 4 core principles of what's important to me that I get all excited about when I'm looking at someone's course and I'm trying to support a professor, I'm trying to give students the best experience. I'm constantly thinking of these things. And this stems all the way back to my days as a high school teacher, where we're always looking at these elements. And it's just as important for law school, and especially in online settings, where with online settings, you want to make sure you have these key important learning objectives. What are you trying to get your students to get to, and what can I get them? What can I give them, and what tools do I have at, my availability to achieve those objectives? And that's part of the way that we as a team, Megan and I, and anyone else from the BARBRI and West side, can really help you reach those goals. And
Ben, can you
yep,
give an example of what a good learning objective and maybe a not so good learning objective sound like?
yes. I think the best example is that most people actually don't think of it. They have their required objectives that are given to them by the law school that they add at the end of the semester, and then they have one final exam. But with kind of going in with formative assessment, when we say something that needs to be measurable, we don't, one thing is our instructional designer's least favorite word is understand, because by the end of this week, you're going to understand A, B, and C, but you can't measure understand. We want to have those active verbs such as apply this skill to here, or compare and contrast these two court cases in a way for A, B, and C. And all of these are kind of connected. So the way that you start with your learning objectives and what we like to call backwards design, it's like, what's your end goal? And you get there through active learning, feedback and assessment, and scaffolding. So we always want to build up to reach those goals. And with an online setting, we have a variety of tools that can help you do that, whether it be lecture design or assessment design, or just coming up with open-ended discussion board questions that, brings about a higher level of learning for your students. And most importantly, you get the feedback to understand where students are at. So there aren't any surprises at the end of the semester when you do have that final exam or final project. Here's our lovely image of an assembly line. And this kind of goes back to what Megan and I always get excited about when we're talking in these settings, is this idea: professors and colleges, we know that you're busy. You have a lot of work working with students and doing new research and being the expert on the content. And we don't try to pretend that we're the expert on contracts or property law or tax law, but we do know that we can help you in other places where it is a lot of work to build online elements to courses, and it is a lot of work to building an online course or even a whole online program at your law school. What we like to do is view it as this assembly line process where let you be the expert on content and let Megan and I and anyone else be the experts in what we know, whether it be designing online experiences, providing online casebooks, setting those instructional design strategies such as objectives, reaching ABA, and we're here to help with that. And that's kind of the BARBRI way of working all together to make an end product that your students will enjoy and gain knowledge from.
And when we talk about the course materials too, that's also sort of a full circle there as well, because the course materials, the case books, all that stuff that you have historically used in your courses is coming from you and your colleagues. Our authors are all faculty. So on the front end, the things that you use as the basis of that course, as the learning materials themselves, are coming from that faculty realm and circling back then into the course, and then we build up from there.
Thanks. And, we want to think of online design as kind of like a roadmap. This is similar to what I said before, so we don't have to go through all of this, but it's this whole idea of backwards design with creating the end in mind. And we're using those instructional design skills and tools available to help create good online learning experiences for your students. So instructional design, active learning processes, formative and summative assessments, and definitely collaboration and interactivity between students and professors, as stated in the ABA, as something that's definitely needed, and also between professors, students, and in our case, BARBRI and West, to help them achieve their goals. And just to kind of show you an overall, if we were to work with some of you, and hopefully we will, on designing an entire course. When we think about instructional design and the support that we can give, it's a very thorough process where, once again, where we're trying to meet your needs and your student needs. We know we're not the experts in individual content, but we are the experts in instructional design and developing these courses. And what we would do is normally follow a similar path to here, where we would have what we call a kickoff meeting, where we talk about your experience with the course, what you're looking for when it comes to asynchronous or synchronous or blended education experience for your students, so that we can come up with ideas on how we can develop that course. Once we have that kickoff and we gain that background knowledge as a team in collaboration with you, we would map out the course structure. Okay, we're going to have this many modules, and the assessments are going to kind of look like this. And we're going to want lectures and these types of interactivity, where we'll have a kind of a skeleton analysis of what we want to do with the end in mind, so that we can do those backwards planning, think of the objectives, and then design assessments and interactivity to those needs. And that goes to the heavy lifting part of where we might record lectures and build those activities for your students, so that you have a fully, visualized course that before we release to students, we will definitely do a thorough analysis and quality assurance, making sure everything is the way that works for you. One thing we also do when we think of that assembly line process is the support we give once courses go live and even after courses wrap up, where we want to make sure we know that students are progressing in the way that you deem fit, and then also what can we do to improve for the next time the courses run.
Thanks, Ben. Okay, so we're going to shift gears just a little bit from sort of the instructional design pieces to a little bit of a discussion of the content that can sort of run the course underneath it all. So if you wouldn't mind indulging me on another poll question, we've got the QR code here, and I believe we've just put the link into the chat. So take a look and let us know what types of content that you have incorporated into courses that you've either built or taught in, let's just say, the recent past. We all know that law school is typically synonymous with the casebook as the main artifact of the course, but I think over the last few years that's changed quite a bit. So we're curious how you've engaged with those different types of content. So I'll give you all a minute to take that poll, and then we'll jump back in. So let me take a look at the Slido here and see how that's shaking out. Awesome. Got some good info coming through here. Interesting. Videos in the lead. All of you have selected videos thus far. Love to see it. All right. Well, I'm going to let you all continue working through that, and I'm going to get started. But yeah, please keep working with that poll. But let me dive in and start giving you some info about the West content world. So like Ben was mentioning, he and I are sort of two sides of the same coin of help and service that you can get through West and BARBRI. One side being the instructional design support, and then the other being the content support. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with West Academic and Foundation Press, but we're able to offer a whole slew of content that you can use in your courses with your students, and then also things that are specific to faculty. So for students, obviously we have the texts themselves. That's kind of the main bread and butter here, print books and ebooks. We have a pretty large and growing library of audio and video content. Big libraries of multiple choice quizzing, a lot of question banks that are organized by topics, subtopics, etc. And a growing library of interactive learning modules. And we'll get into some details on that here in a minute. And then on the faculty side of the fence, on the text category, that includes things like the teacher's manuals that accompany your case books. Those are written by the authors of the books, helping you administer that book, providing answers, those sorts of things. Sometimes we may have lecture notes or sample syllabi. Again, those sort of accompany that teacher's manual, things that help you administer that book in your class. There's discussion prompts, things that you may want to use in a discussion board, or even just to help you think about how you want to lay out your class and think of those scandalous questions you want your students to wrestle with. Additionally, there can be some sample PowerPoint slides, different videos available from the authors, and other types of interactive content. So a whole library of things at your fingertips. So I'm going to get into some of these in some detail. Ben, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I was just going to say one thing, going back to the idea of this backwards design, there's a lot of materials out there with West, but you don't have to necessarily know about all of them, because one thing with our assembly line process is if I, as an instructional design, is starting that development with a professor or a team, you might be bringing up your content and thinking about what you like. And since Megan and I work together on a regular basis, I might say, I know that we have a great video or casebook or tool that aligns to that perfectly over on the West side. Let me pull Megan in and we can show you some products.
And I'll caveat as well. I know we've got a couple of our account managers on the call here as well. They are the experts on our catalog and are very well versed in everything that we have, and are pulled into these conversations as well. So we've got a lot of expertise on what we have and we can help you with that. You're not alone with any information overload with finding these things in the catalog. All right, so I'm going to dive into each of these in a little bit of detail. Again, don't be overwhelmed. All of this can be talked through on an individual basis, but to give you a feel for the scope of our texts, on the left side here, you'll see the required category, and this is sort of the main casebook, coursebook side of the world. Depending on what it is you need, how you'd like to teach, the scope of what you want, we probably have something that will fit your needs. We have in the neighborhood of about 750 casebooks in our library, between the West Academic imprint and the Foundation Press imprint. Different series approach teaching different ways. Some are a little bit more traditional, following a strict case method and having students do a lot of that heavy lifting themselves. Others are a little bit more straightforward, don't use a lot of cases. So depending on how you'd like to approach it, there's all sorts of good stuff for you there. In the center here, we have some recommended titles, and this can get into things that are focusing on skills exercises. A couple of different series that do that in terms of some case study type things. A couple of study aids that tend to fall into the mini course book side of the world that are a little bit more reference guides, things like the Nutshell series, concise horn books, concepts and insights, those sorts of things. So if you're looking for something a little lighter than a full-on casebook, some of those might be good options. And then over on the right, we have a huge library of study aids. Some of you may be familiar with our study aids platform. It's an electronic library of all the study aids content that schools subscribe to for their students. This is a great resource so students can self-serve, find what they like. Again, each series sort of does it a little bit differently, but it's nice to have these concepts explained from multiple different voices. Sometimes the way one person explains it might click better than the way someone else does. So students have a nice library of things to work with there, and also practice. Some of these are reference materials, some are outlines, some are practice questions and practice exams and that sort of thing. So little something for everybody here. Some of these titles are e-only on the study aid side, and most of these are also available in print. So a lot of availability for students depending on their preference. Moving on then, so in addition to the texts, I imagine many of you are familiar with the phrase Casebook Plus, and if you're not, that's okay. But a lot of our casebooks, in fact, nearly all of them, I believe, are bundled together in something called a Casebook Plus bundle. And what that means is the book will be accompanied by a learning library of some digital materials. And I'd say the most popular, most used of those digital materials are these banks of quizzing. And students really like these. This, Ben, I see you smiling, is getting into that formative assessment piece where students are able to test themselves, get that feedback. You can see on the sample here on my screen, this is an example of one of those questions where a student, aka me, answered this question and lo and behold, got it right. Hooray for me. But you still get an explanation there telling you why it was correct. And the same is going to be true for any of those incorrect answers. You're going to see why it was incorrect, so that you're still learning, even though you may not have performed right here. The point is not high stakes knowledge check. This is about additional learning. Ben, anything to add on that point?
No, I think it's a great tool that I know that I've used with a lot of the partners that I've worked with, and it makes kind of that formative assessment a little bit easier for professors, and it makes it easier for students as well, just getting that feedback automatically and getting the data on how they did. It really helps with the learning process and knowing kind of what they need to work on and maybe even ask for additional support from their professors.
Mhm. So with these Casebook Plus libraries, there's a couple of categories of questions that are available. The main set are application style questions that are sorted by topic or by chapter to the book so that students are getting into the right category of question at the right time. And then there's a bank of subject area review questions, which is sort of comprehensive that they might be doing at the end of the semester as they're preparing for their final exams. Depending on topic, some of these do also have a bank of black letter questions, which are getting at some of the simpler pieces like elements or definitions, just some of those more memorization type things. And then we also have sets of short answer questions and essay questions that also do come with sample answers alongside them. Students can practice their writing skills on those. Those sample answers are annotated, so they might mark up why maybe the answer could have been written better. They're not model answers, they're sample answers. So students can learn how maybe they could improve certain things that faculty might be looking for. So it's good fodder for them again on that formative assessment side. All right, moving on to some of the mixed media things. Like I mentioned earlier, our audio and video libraries are growing pretty quickly. Um, a lot of different stuff here for different purposes. Some of it is maybe a little bit more geared towards the student study side of the fence, but as you're thinking about building out a course and wanting to pull in other materials, maybe a different version of an explanation, like we were talking about earlier, these things can be nice little additions, depending on what you want to do. And that's something that Ben is really great at advising on where these things might fit in. So, in the audio side, we have a couple of lecture series that are really A to Z coverage on these topics. So those are really good fodder for students. They like the audios because they're mobile. They can listen while they're commuting, while they're at the gym, whatever it may be. There's been a lot of demand for that, so students really enjoy that content. Um, the Office Hours is another audio series, but it's really getting more at the tougher topics, and those can be lighter, a little bit funnier, oftentimes shorter tracks. So those have been pretty popular. We've dabbled in the world of podcasts here. Legal Tensor is kind of a current events in the frame of the legal world. So students have enjoyed those. And then we've taken a few of our print titles and turned them into audiobooks. So in the Short and Happy series, a number of those authors have recorded their books. So we do have the author themselves reading it, and then students can consume it in the audio format. So just another way to engage with that content and give your students a chance to uh, listen rather than learn if they have a different learning style. Then on the video side of the world, again, a number of different things here. Some are intended to be sort of supplemental to the book. They can be things that you could recommend to your student if they're struggling with a topic. Bottom left there, you'll see a little thumbnail of a video that says depreciation. Those come along with a tax book. Those are really great, just mini lectures for students if they're struggling with a concept. Those are nice to pop into a module and have students get that extra help there. Otherwise, other books are built around videos, and the video is sort of the crux of the product if you're trying to get at those things that are a little harder to teach online, like negotiation, counseling, some of those skills-based things. So in the upper right, there's sort of the white book with the blue. That's client conversations, and that book is built around a series of 10 videos that show the good, the bad, and the ugly on some client conversations. And the ugly is truly ugly. They're pretty fun to watch. And the book is all about students kind of assessing and critically analyzing what they saw and how to improve, etc. So there's a lot of good stuff here using these mixed media methods to get at some of these skills-based things, some of those softer things that aren't truly doctrinal, and help your students learn. Ben, anything to add there?
Just that as a visual learner myself, I love the case brief animations. I feel like I've learned a lot of law through those. So thank you.
All right. Moving on to the interactive content. So again, more of the same of having ways to learn in a different method. This gives us a chance to add a little bit of gamification. I know it's kind of a buzzword a few years back, but it's true. These are fun. They're the sexy thing that everyone likes to talk about. We have a number of things that sort of fall into this interactive category. And I think the first and probably still most popular are the evidence simulations that come along with our merit evidence book, Learning Evidence, bottom right here. This is a simulation where a student is placed in the realm of a courtroom, and they're supposed to be listening for reasons to object and are supposed to object at the right moment and then give a reason for that objection. And they're scored and they get points. And it's a really great way for them to practice what they know about the rules of evidence and apply it in real time, thinking on their feet and putting a little bit of a game behind it. So that's a really popular one, and that comes with that evidence book. In the center there, the developing professional skills. These are skills-based modules where students are given a bit of a fact pattern. They really kind of resemble an interactive MPT or really a little bit of the next gen exam, where they get that fact pattern. They're asked to do something, whether it's write a client email responding to a question or maybe drafting an answer, whatever the case may be. They get a small little library of materials. Maybe it's a plot map in the case of a property dispute, or a set of emails or a transcript. And we walk them through a few things as well that deal with maybe the practice norms and the PR rules that might apply. So they're getting sort of a full picture, but in a low stakes environment. Then they can self-assess their work at the end. So quite a number of things here that add sort of that immersive experience that's something more than reading. They're really learning by doing. Quite a few things that we can offer to students on that front. So now what? This is a lot of stuff that I think we've thrown at you. And you may be wondering, what do we do? How can we take advantage of all of this? It's quite a lot swirling in your head. And really it can vary depending on who you are, what your needs are, what sort of school you're at, what other resources you might have. So the good news is, regardless of those factors, we can probably help. We just need to get you to the right place and talking to the right people. So the best way that we've come up with to sort of explain the spectrum of where you may fall and how we can get you to the right folks is going to be this. Now, don't freak out. I know this is a lot of text. I'll walk you through it. So on the left side of the screen, the blue there, that's sort of our traditional casebook adoption motion that I'm sure most of you are familiar with, where you may speak with our account managers. They visit you at your school and talk to you about what you're teaching, how you like to teach, and help you sort of pick out what materials make the most sense for your class. And that's not going to change. That is something that we will continue doing. The account managers are amazing at that. And along with that motion, though, beyond the book itself, like we've been talking about, there's so many other materials. So they can certainly talk with you about those things. And we can integrate that stuff far more deeply with you into maybe your school's LMS. If you're using something like Canvas, that stuff can be pulled more tightly into your Canvas course, help your students with that platform fatigue. So those are sorts of things that we can talk with you about. Moving into the center, that becomes a little bit more of a deeper conversation and connection with us is the BARBRI JD courses. And here we have a library of over 20 courses that have been built with faculty subject matter experts that we've worked with, often authors on the west side of the world. And they work with us and with people like Ben and others on Ben's team to create fully asynchronous JD courses. Those courses meet all of the standards and guidelines that Ben was telling us about and are available semester after semester when schools want to offer something additional in their catalog. If that's something that your school would like to offer, this is a catalog of courses you may want to check out. When we offer these courses, we do offer faculty alongside of that. We have faculty that come in and administer those with us, or that's a course that you can have someone at your school teach as well. So a lot of flexibility there, but the content, the course itself is existing, and you don't have to do that several months upfront work to kind of build that out if it's a short-term thing. And then lastly, on the right, that's sort of the sky's the limit. Let's go nuts and really make Ben think hard and come up with stuff. So we do a number of school-wide partnerships where if somebody has a school-wide program that you're trying to stand up, maybe a brand new online JD, maybe you just got a variance with ABA, whatever it might be. If you're setting up a new program and you want help creating a number of courses, managing those, and even if you need help with the upfront pieces like the market research and strategy, operational support, etc., those are all services that we can help you out with as well. So depending on how deep of integration you need, how much instructional design support you need alongside the content help, any of these things are within our wheelhouse and we can assist you with that just depending on what you need. So reach out to us and we can get you to the right people. Ben, anything to add on this slide before I move on?
Just that, we can certainly help figure out which of these areas might work best for you or your program. We have people that can talk to you and walk you through each of these a little bit in more detail to kind of figure out where you might fit and what might benefit your specific situation or your course or even your program at large.
Thank you. All right, one additional thing I want to mention that might be of interest to this crowd is in the new year, we're going to be starting a new monthly info series that will be offering some tips, best practices, practical advice on various instructional design principles that you can employ in your own courses. So hopefully, I think either end of January, beginning of February, we'd like to get the first one out. And if that's something that you'd be interested in receiving, this QR code will take you to a sign up. So just pop your email in there and we'll make sure that you're included on that. We're excited about this. I think it's going to be really interesting. So we'd love to share some information with you there. And I see, yep, Rachel's got the link in the chat for that as well, if the QR isn't quite working for you. Ben, anything to add on the e-learning brief?
No, I think this is just going to be a great opportunity to hear about what's new in online learning and new tools available, and just being able to stay on the forefront of what's going on in law education and law online learning.
Wonderful. Okay. So with that, that brings us to the end here. I do have this faculty instructional design email right at the top. So if you are in a position of, okay, I'd like to talk to somebody about this, I don't know who, and I'm not sure about what and where to go with it yet, this is where you're going to want to send us a note and we'll make sure to get you to the right folks. Otherwise, if you want to chat directly with Ben or with me, you see our emails there as well. So we'd love to talk at any point. But thank you for joining us here.